This video is best viewed on a full screen at 1080p quality. Click the gear at the lower right corner of the video window. Next, click the quality option. And finally, select 1080p. I'm projecting all of the images in a dimly lit room rather than a dark room. For this, I'm using two shaded lamps placed about 12 feet diagonally from the center of the screen, and each lamp has a small 15-watt chandelier bulb in it. The ambient light in the room measures 4 lumen at the center of the screen. So the two most important factors in your home theater are obviously the projector and the screen, and that's why I want to quickly mention the type of screen I'm projecting onto. In this case, it's a Spandex projector screen instead of the more typical blackout material. There are several advantages to this type of screen, one of which it can attach to a $30 backdrop stand. It's easy to do. You just take some 5 spring clips and you attach the screen to the backdrop stand. And this can be used outdoors in your backyard, or take it with you camping or to a party. And the screen I have here is made in the USA by Stretch Screen USA. It's available on Amazon for around $80, which is actually less than a do-it-yourself fixed frame type screen. You don't have to buy wood, corner brackets, staples, and actually build the frame as you do with that type of frame. The other advantage is that you don't need a permanent empty wall space. For example, the situation I have here is a little awkward to put up a fixed frame screen because I have a staircase in the way. But with the Spandex projector screen, that's not a problem. It literally only takes 30 seconds to put up this screen. Right here, we're all halfway done already. It just simply attaches to 5 small hooks that are in the ceiling, and you can barely see them. And the corner brackets, the bottom corners, attach with a bungee to something as simple as a water jug or whatever you want to use for that. And there you have it. The screen is completely up. So here you can see the Spandex projector screen produces a really good image, but that's only half the story. Check this out. If we pick up our camera and walk around behind the screen, you can see that the Spandex projector screen can also act as a backlight screen. That's like getting 2 screens in one. No other type of projector screen can do this. Now, buyer beware, you may be tempted to go with a cheaper knockoff version from China, but go with the one made in the USA. It's Amazon's choice, even at a higher price, and it has 147 reviews so far, where the cheap one only has 3 reviews, which can easily be faked. So here's the Amazon product page of the Spandex projector screen that I have, and they have images along the left. As you can see, it's a much cleaner design instead of sewn crooked and all that, and the fabric is a much higher quality. It's a tighter weave, which will give you better colors and a sharper image. And here is a real-world example of that. I have the 2 screens hung side by side, with the Made in the USA one on the left and the Chinese knockoff version on the right. And you can really see the difference in the color quality, the brightness, the saturation. And if you look at this next image here, you can actually see how much detail you lose in the smoke due to the looser weave of the cheaper fabric. Here's the product page one more time, and I put a link in the description to make it easy for you. Alright, let's get going. Compare our projectors. Here you can see the size comparison between the ZTE Spro 2 Pico projector with a brightness of 200 lumen and a resolution of 1280 by 720, and the Akey1 Plus budget projector with a claimed brightness of 2200 lumen and a lower 854 by 480 resolution. Our first example will be a simple white image to compare the brightness. As you can see, the ZTE Spro 2 is much brighter and more evenly lit than the Akey1 Plus. Next, let's zoom in to compare the pixels. Here we have some basic colored squares, and as you can see, the ZTE Spro 2 is brighter with more accurate colors than the Akey1 Plus. You may want to pause on this slide. This is the actual lumen measurement of each colored square. This was done in a completely dark room as opposed to a dimly lit room like all our other slides were shot in. Let's zoom in to compare the color pixels. Here we have a basic color gradient. And as you can see, the ZTE colors are brighter and more saturated. Here's a more advanced color gradient. And the ZTE projector has a smoother transition between some of the colors. and some colored smoke on a white background. The ZTE Spro 2, the higher resolution, produces better details. And let's zoom in to see that more closely. Reversing that, we have the colored smoke on a black background. And the ZTE Spro 2, once again, the higher resolution, produces better highlight details. And zooming in, we can see the big difference here. Here are some highlight and shadow bars. And the ZTE Spro 2 has much better shadow details. Let's zoom in to compare the resolution, a sharper image from the ZTE. Here we'll look at the shadows of this image, and the ZTE Spro 2 has much better shadow details. And zooming in, better contrast and a sharper image as well. Here we'll look at the highlights. And the ZTE Spro 2 is brighter and much sharper than the lower resolution Akey1. And another good image for a shadow comparison. The ZTE Spro 2 has much brighter shadow details and better contrast. Zooming in, we can see how dull the Akey1 Plus is. Here we can compare shadows and highlights in a single image. The ZTE is sharper with better shadow details. Next, we'll compare the resolution with some grid patterns. The ZTE Spro 2 produces much thicker and brighter grid lines. And let's zoom in to compare that more closely. Here's another grid pattern for comparison. The ZTE Spro 2 produces a stronger grid pattern, brighter and more uniform. Zooming in, sharper as well. Here's some black grids on a white background, and the ZTE projector, the higher resolution, produces a sharper grid pattern. And let's zoom in to compare that more closely. And reversing that, we'll do white grids on a black background, and the ZTE Spro 2 produces a brighter and sharper image. And we'll zoom in on this one to compare that. Next, we'll compare the text quality. The ZTE Spro 2, the higher resolution, produces a more legible text. And when we zoom in, we can see it's sharper and brighter. Here we can compare some flesh tones, and the ZTE projector produces brighter faces with sharper details. Zooming in, we can see the clear difference here. And a few more faces for comparison. The Akey1 Plus faces are dark and somewhat blurry. And when we zoom in, we can see how much sharper the faces are from the ZTE projector. Next, we'll do a color comparison with this image. And the ZTE Spro 2 colors are brighter. And when we zoom in, we can see the details are better as well. Here's a similar image for a color comparison. And the Akey1 Plus produces darker colors. You lose some of the details, it's so dark. And here's a lower contrast image for comparison. The ZTE Spro 2 produces a much brighter image. Here we'll do another color comparison. And notice the difference in the yellow color between the two projectors. This will be a good one to look at the clouds in the sky, and the ZTE Spro 2 has much better shadow details. Let's zoom in to compare the other details. Here we have a good high contrast image, and the ZTE Spro 2 is much brighter with better shadow details. And let's zoom in to compare that more closely. This image will look at the contrast, and the ZTE Spro 2 has much better contrast. And zooming in, we can see it has much better resolution as well. This is a good low light image for comparison here, and the ZTE Spro 2 has much better shadow details, and the colors are a bit different. Zooming in on the pyramid, we can see the ZTE is sharper as well. Here is a sunset for comparison, and the ZTE Spro 2 is much brighter overall. You lose some of the details in the Akey1 Plus. And a bridge lit up at night. The ZTE Spro 2 is once again much brighter overall. And zooming in on the bolts on the bridge, we can see they kind of disappear in the Akey1 Plus projector. Here's another good night shot for comparison. And the ZTE Spro 2 has much better shadow details. And when we zoom in on this one, look at the fence in the background. You can't even see it in the Akey1 projector. Here is a fairly high contrast image, and the ZTE Spro 2 has much better shadow details and brighter overall. And zooming in, we can see the resolution is better as well. Here's an illuminated hot air balloon in a dark sky. The ZTE is brighter with sharper details. And some fireworks to test the fine line resolution. The ZTE Spro 2, the higher resolution, maintains better fine line details. And our final image, a night shot with some stars in the sky. The ZTE Spro 2 has much better shadow details, and we'll zoom in on that and compare the resolution much better from the ZTE Spro 2. Next, we'll compare the ZTE Spro 2 Pico projector to a quote-unquote full-size name brand BenQ projector that's rated at 2000 lumen. You'll learn in some of my other reviews that the name brand 2000 lumen projectors are actually many times brighter than the so-called 2000 lumen budget projectors that sell on Amazon for under $150. Here's a quick brightness comparison between the sub $100 dB Power T20 budget projector with a claimed rating of 1800 lumen and the name brand BenQ projector rated at 2000 lumen. From this picture, it's clear that the claims of cheap knockoffs are not always true. I think you'd agree the BenQ projector on the right is much more than 10% brighter than the budget projector on the left. The same holds true for the quality of your projector screen. Here's a quick comparison between a cheap $30 Spandex projector screen made in China on the right and an $80 Spandex projector screen made in the USA on the left. As you can see, it's worth spending a bit more for the higher quality image you'll get. With that being said, you will remember from the beginning of this video I showed you that I was projecting these images onto a white Spandex projector screen. However, if you want to use your projector in a room that's not totally dark, or if you want to use it outside, like in your backyard for an outdoor movie, or take it camping or to a party or something, there are two things you may want to consider: a brighter projector and the darker silver Spandex projector screen. Even though the silver screen looks quite a bit darker than the white screen, it'll actually give you a nice bright image with more contrast, which is especially useful when you can't get an environment that's completely dark, such as being outside with a full moon or if there's streetlights nearby. Now, the other benefit of the darker silver Spandex screen is that you won't have to wash it as often if you accidentally drop it on the ground, because you won't notice dirt as much on the darker fabric. But keep in mind, if the Spandex screen does get dirty, you can just throw it in the washer using cool water and then dry it for 10 to 15 minutes in the dryer and it's good as new. That's not as easy with some other types of projector screens. And finally, you'll remember when I showed you the rear projection ability of the white Spandex projector screen. Well, the silver screen has that same ability. Okay, let's continue with our BenQ comparison. Here you can see the size comparison between the ZTE Spro 2 Pico projector rated at 200 lumen and a 1280 by 720 resolution, and the name brand full-size BenQ W1070 projector with a brighter 2000 lumen and a higher 1920 by 1080 resolution. First, we'll compare the brightness with a simple white image, and as you can see, the BenQ is much brighter than the ZTE projector. And let's zoom in to compare the pixels. Here are the basic color squares, and once again the BenQ is brighter. And the lumen measurements here, that once again this was done in a completely dark room as opposed to a dimly lit room. And let's zoom in to compare the color pixels. And here we have a color gradient. BenQ is brighter with a bit stronger colors. And a more advanced color gradient, nice results from both, with the BenQ being slightly brighter. And the colored smoke, BenQ is brighter with better details. Zooming in, we can see that here. And reversing that, the colored smoke on a black background. Nice results from both, but zooming in, we can see the higher resolution BenQ produces sharper details. And here we're going to look at the shadows and details. The BenQ, being brighter, has better shadow details. And zooming in, it's sharper as well. And here we can see the BenQ has brighter shadow details and more contrast. With this image, we see good highlight details from both projectors. The BenQ once again brighter and sharper. And looking at the shadow details, a decent image once again from both projectors. Zooming in, we can see the BenQ is sharper and slightly brighter. And here we see pretty nice highlight details from both projectors, with the BenQ having better shadow details. Here's the grid pattern, decent results from both projectors. Zooming in, we can see the BenQ is slightly better. And a similar grid pattern, nice results from both projectors. Zooming in, a little bit sharper from the BenQ. And decent results here from both projectors with the black grid on a white background. Zooming in, we can see the BenQ is slightly sharper. And the white grid's on a black background. We'll zoom in on this one and once again see the BenQ is slightly sharper. And here we can see we get fairly legible text from both projectors. Zooming in, we can see the higher resolution BenQ is once again slightly sharper. And for skin tones, decent results from both projectors. And zooming in, we can see the BenQ slightly sharper. A few more faces for comparison. Good results from both projectors with the BenQ being brighter and sharper. Here's a good color comparison. BenQ colors are noticeably brighter. Zooming in, better detail as well. And similar color comparison, the BenQ is brighter. And again, we see nice results from both projectors with the BenQ being brighter. Here's a color comparison, good results from both projectors. And here you'll notice nice shadow details in the clouds from both projectors. And zooming in, we can see the BenQ is noticeably brighter and sharper. Here's our high contrast image with the BenQ being a little bit brighter and better overall. Zooming in. Here you can see much better contrast from the BenQ projector. And zooming in, sharper details as well. And a little bit brighter overall image from the BenQ, and zooming in we can see the resolution is sharper. The sunset is brighter from the BenQ projector. Here the BenQ image is brighter, and zooming in we can see the bolts on the bridge are a little bit sharper. Looking at the dress in this image, you can see the BenQ has better contrast, and zooming in, slightly sharper details. And with this image we get good results from both projectors, and we'll zoom in and we can see sharper details from the BenQ projector. Nice colors from both projectors with the BenQ being brighter. Here we can see the fine line details are maintained fairly well from both projectors with the BenQ being slightly brighter and sharper. And for our final image we see nice results once again from both projectors with the BenQ being brighter, and zooming in we can see it sharper as well. So my final advice is as follows. If you're always going to be using your projector in a totally dark room, then the brightness isn't as important as the resolution. It'd be better to get a dimmer projector with a higher resolution. So if your viewing environment isn't totally dark, such as a room with windows and you don't have blackout curtains during the day, or you're outside where there may be street lights or a glowing moon, then you'll want to go with a brighter projector. But remember that cheap projectors are almost never as bright as they claim to be. And as far as resolution goes, I would typically pick a less bright projector with a higher resolution over a brighter projector with a lower resolution. You can always try to make your room darker, but you'll never be able to increase the resolution of your projector. I personally would never get a projector with a resolution below 720p, which is a resolution of 1280 pixels across by 720 pixels high. The reason for this is that you'll most likely be enlarging the video to about 9 feet across, and at that size you can actually see the individual pixels on lower resolution projectors. I think a 1080p projector is about the highest resolution you'd need, as a 4K projector doesn't really add all that much to the picture quality for the much higher price you'd be paying. Here's a screenshot from a YouTube video that compares a 4K projector versus a 180p projector. It's being projected onto a wall, but even so, there's really not much difference between the quality. As far as sound goes, I would recommend an external speaker of some sort, as most projectors that I've come across under $500 do not have great sound quality. But I will say I was fairly impressed with the sound I got from the soda can-sized Nebula capsule. You'll also want to consider if you'd like a portable projector that can run on batteries, as opposed to a projector that has to be plugged into the wall. The portability of the smaller projectors is always nice, but keep in mind that the battery life is almost always under 2 hours. But it is not limited to running on the battery only. You can always plug it in for unlimited runtime. As far as portable projectors go, I really like the Akey brand. The P300, P700, and M5 projectors have a fairly high resolution, nice colors, and good brightness. The Nebula capsule also produces a decent image with a really good speaker, but it does have a lower resolution than the three AXA projectors. Alright everybody, thanks for your time. I hope you found this video informative, and if you think others would find it helpful, please click the thumbs up button, which makes it easier for them to find it. And also don't forget to click on the links for the Spandex projector screens below in the description, and check back for more projector comparison videos coming up soon. Thanks for watching.